DC's duo of James Gunn and Peter Safran took time to have a press event last Friday where they updated us, the people, on where things are going with DC Studios. It's been just over 2 years since the big film and television overhaul with DC was announced, with Gunn and Safran taking control of the franchise. Gunn reiterated their desires to bring new stories to life with these characters. The updates include the following. Supergirl is halfway through production. Lanterns began production last week. Clayface will be directed by James Watkins and is eyeing a fall 2026 release. Sergeant Rock, still being directed by Luca Guadagnino, no longer has Daniel Craig attached and is looking for its new star. And the animated Robin movie, Dynamic Duo, is in pre-production. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, Gunn had some comments about the Brave and the Bold that some are taking as confirmation that Robert Pattinson will not be the DCU's Batman, with the filmmaker saying, "It's certainly not the plan." And Safran added, "And we love him, but we've got to introduce a Batman into the DCU. That's imperative." And so that's the plan with Brave and the Bold. Pause to take a breath, DC. Can we keep up with Gunn and Safran's pace?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. This apparently was some kind of private press event on Friday. It was an invitation-only thing where Gunn and Safran invited various reporters from trades and sites and just media outlets to come and basically ask them questions. So they weren't really presenting anything. Like, they weren't saying, hey, here's our new slate. It was more just like, what kind of questions do you have? And so, interestingly enough, if you go read the article on all of the trade sites about this event, Variety and Deadline and Hollywood Reporter and all of them, they all kind of say different things about it. Like, they're all kind of like focusing on different things. So like, one's hyper-focused on Batman, one's hyper-focused on confirmed projects. It's kind of all over the place. And so I don't know if it's the best way of releasing information, because when you look at this, it's simultaneously a lot of news nuggets and also nothing at all. You know, like, when you look at it, it's weird. But I guess if we're trying to look at it, the biggest thing that stood out to me was the sentiment from James Gunn that a lot of projects that were announced at the beginning have diverted into two buckets. It's, you've got some in the we're still working on them and they're done, or they're getting there, or they're getting ready to start production, or the script's being worked on, or whatever, or they're falling into the bucket of, we just aren't there with this particular thing, and I don't know when we'll get there. So you mentioned the list, Superman and Lanterns and Supergirl and Clayface and all of this. But then there were all these other movies and shows that were mentioned at the very beginning when they announced the DCU, like James Mangold's Swamp Thing, like The Authority, like Booster Gold, like all of these like random other projects that have kind of gone into the scrap heap. And James Gunn, you know, he went out of his way to say, look, they're still happening, I think, but like they're just various Waller is another one, just various reasons. Maybe the script's not there. Maybe we're just not quite at the point of feeling like this is something that we're ready to do yet. Or like in James Mangold's case, he just hasn't really moved forward on Swamp Thing yet. And it just, again, it's kind of like it's a problem in Marvel and DC. It's been more of a DC problem than a Marvel problem, but it's announcing too much at the beginning. It's like throwing it all out there. We're doing X, Y, and Z, and then having to roll it back a few years later. So James Gunn also said, you know, I have a 6-year plan to culminate this universe in like an Avenger-style event. Makes total sense. But what's that going to look like if the only characters you've established are Superman, Supergirl, and Clayface? You know what I mean? Like, how are we doing it? You know, with that, is there going to be a Batman? Paradise Lost, this whole like Wonder Woman prequel apparently is way on the back burner too. So like, what are we doing with that? And it leaves, again, this is what I mean by it's a lot of information. It's simultaneously not a lot of information, because I'm left with a lot of questions about what that plan looks like. Like, apparently Andy Muschietti's not writing The Flash, or not The Flash, the Batman Brave and the Bold. Apparently James Gunn insinuated he was working with a writer, and he refused to name the writer, which was weird. He was like, nah, I can't tell you who the writer is because it would put too much pressure on him, but I'm working close with him because I love Batman. And you're like, wait, what? So who's directing it? And they're like, well, Andy Muschietti will see the script first. And they're like, so is he directing it? They're like, maybe. It's like weird. It's like a weird thing.
Oh.
So
keep my seat warm for me, kid.
So, if you told me tomorrow James Gunn was like, I'm directing Batman Brave and the Bold, I'd be like, well, duh, of course you are, So who knows at this point? So, I think there's plenty of reasons still to be excited about DC and DCU and DC Studios and all of this. I like the idea that they're creator driven. I like the idea that they will not move forward on something without scripts. But we're also seeing the downside of that because they don't have a Feige that's like, give me a script by the end of the month or else. It's more like, oh, James Mangold, you want to give me a Swamp Thing script in 6 years? Cool, no big deal. It's a different style, and there's pros and cons to it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe it's because they haven't disappointed us yet, but it feels to me like a lot is coming out, especially the fact that they took over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we've got all this stuff on the slate and all this stuff ready. It feels like the early days of Marvel to me, where you've got, every couple movies a year will start coming, and we're gonna start feeling that like buildup of DC content to some sort of Justice League or something like that, World's Finest, something. I just this event sounds terrible, and it feels like, because none of these stories are big. None of them are big at all. They are all lightning round stories normally on a normal week, but there's enough of them that it made an event out of it. And like, that feels to me like James Gunn was trying to put on an El Capitan theater moment, but like didn't have the goods. It's like, look at all the stuff I want to announce, all these properties. I have tiny announcements about each one. Instead of like dropping a slate, he's just like, here's a little bitty nugget of information, the same kind of information I roll out every week, but there's enough of them that I'll leave Twitter and come into the real world, and that feels funny to me.
That's just it. It's like, yo guys, listen to all this stuff that we're doing that I've already told you about on every social platform, because I can't help myself, and I've got an itchy trigger finger when it comes to the post button. I was like writing this up, and I'm like, okay, James, Peter too, I guess. Peter's just there, right? He's just like the side of ketchup you get with a burger. It's like, oh, there's Peter too. Sorry, Peter Safran, it's not your fault. But it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not
also
hooking us anymore.
Should also be mentioned that they did also announce that they have no major plans of doing anything with Comic-Con this year, which I think is insane. Like, I think that's the most insane thing that he said. This whole thing was like, you have Superman coming out. Like, you have Peacemaker coming out a month after that. You have Supergirl will have wrapped shooting at that point. Like, why? Like, why would you not?
Comic-Con wrong, James Gunn.
I was going to say, what's his beef? Because this was this last year too.
Yeah, like, go do your slate announcement at Comic-Con, and people will love it, and they'll get excited for it, and you can promote the hell out of Superman and all your other stuff. Like, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I agree with the take that none of these stories do a ton to move the needle all that much. But if you were to listen to the rest of the internet, those final comments from Gunn regarding Pattinson's, status as not being the DCU Batman, they would say that is headline and feature worthy. But I'm kind of with everybody else here. I've just gotten to that point with James Gunn. It's funny. Like, if I had a Venn diagram, he exists in this very unique cross section where it's like a public figure that I respect, but I also don't trust a word that comes out of his mouth, and there are very few of those. But he exists within that sphere there. So I will look at the some of the announcements here. So like the Clayface movie, we were just talking about that last week to learn that it is going to be James Watkins. Last week I said I thought that maybe Jeff Wadlow was the better guy, but I do think if you look at their filmography and stack the films up side by side, James Watkins is probably the stronger filmmaker. So while he hasn't dabbled in as many high concept things, he can probably deliver a stronger character story, which this sounds like it's going to be. And then I'm just not feeling good about Sergeant Rock with losing Daniel Craig. I like Luca Guadagnino, but I don't think that he necessarily has the voice or the staying power in Hollywood right now to make this thing happen without Daniel Craig, but we'll see.
Well, it's also like Daniel Craig is what made that story interesting.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Like, wow, I don't know Sergeant Rock. I mean, Luke Guadagnino, a hot director right now. Like, that's cool. You got a good director, but you're pulling from an obscure property, but you put Daniel Craig in there. That's what makes it a story. And now, it's just like, okay, let's see who they can pull out for the next one. As for Pattinson, I think their quote is funny because they still won't just say for sure he's not it. Which to me feels like their quote was, "It's certainly not the plan. We need one in the DCU," which to me sounds like we can't wait on the Pattinson to finish what they're doing so we can bring him in, and we have a different idea, but we are getting pressure to do it because people like that movie and they like the Penguin, and it feels to me like there's definitely getting some push to do it because they're like, it's certainly not the plan, but we might have to.
Yeah. Well, they also they
like
mentioned
to
in
me.
this event too that the script for the Batman 2 is not done. That Matt Reeves has not
Right.
turned in a completed script, and we know a lot's going on with Matt Reeves right now, apparently, and it's just taking a lot of time to get that script out there. So, if you've got a 6-year plan to culminate the universe, you can't wait on Batman to show up in 2027 or whatever. And
Right.
ultimately, you got something to do here. I think they're waiting on Batman probably to see the success of Superman first. I think if you're Warner Brothers and you're David Zaslav and Superman doesn't do well at the box office, then that conversation about Batman and who Batman is probably looks a little bit different with James Gunn. And I think if you're David Zaslav and Superman bombs, you're bringing him in and being like, look, we already got a Batman. He's established.
Yeah,
Get Matt Reeves
exactly.
in here. Let's figure it out. So I think there's probably a little bit of hesitation there until we can see the universe do something first and see if it can stand on its own 2 feet before we bring in our own Batman to it.
Yeah, if he has a huge success, he's gonna get all the power
Yeah,
and
he'll
control.
get his
If-
Batman.
if-
If
Yeah.
Superman's a huge hit.
we haven't had a solo Superman movie in a long, long time, but
2013.
yeah, I think Batman movies tend to make more at the box office, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
So I'm wondering if if your Superman is so good that it can beat this Batman that was pretty popular, we'll give you a shot. But if you can't hit these numbers, we can't bet on you to make a better Batman than a Batman we've already built,
Yeah.
You just watched a clip from Multiverse News. If you liked it, go to our channel. We got a whole episode that it comes from. So go check that out and hit the like and subscribe. And we got lots of clips you'll enjoy, but also full hour-long episodes of Multiverse News with lots of things that don't even make it to clips. So check us out.
You stay clippy.